Welcome to The Secrets of Success. By following the proven techniques of the guests who appear on this series, you'll learn that even successful people run into detours and failures, and how you can apply their success techniques to change your life.
You're now listening to the most unique show on radio, the show dedicated to making you a success. Kimberly Stark wants you to flourish. Today, she'll tell you how. Kimberly, thanks for being with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited.
Now, Kimberly, you have a company named Flourish, and I'd like you to tell us a little bit about your background and how Flourish came about.
Sure. Well, in order to do that, Bill, we have to go back pretty far. I grew up in Northern California on the Monterey Bay in this quaint little kind of farm town. I went to New York, a little bit closer to you for school, then ended up on the West Coast in LA. And it was during that time while I was still in college that I got married. So I got married really young. I had 4 kids in 5 years through my 20s. And it was during that time that I noticed a gap. I had a college degree. I ended up graduating, but I noticed a gap in the education and conventional education between what we learned in school, and even those of us who did go that route, and what it actually takes to successfully adult. Because during this time, I was doing things like starting to run our finances and taking care of a home, and of course, mothering, and had a relationship, and trying to get pregnant and then not get pregnant and keep my body in shape and all of those things. And it was during the time that I thought, where was a class on this? Where was a class on the things that we really need to know to be successful adults? So I realize this about myself now, but I'm definitely by nature sort of a seeker. I love studying, and I'll do it just on my own. So I gathered these little bits of information at that time. And there were no podcasts, but whether it was notes on a book I read or a sermon or a speaker or something, and I filed it or ripping things out of a journal or a magazine, actual physical pages. And I filed it in my actual desk drawer, and I called it Kim's Life Skills class. And I had no idea what it was, but in my head, it was like, this is the class that we all need to know in order to successfully adult. These are the concepts. These are the things that we need to talk about. But there it sat for about 10 years even. And until finally, I went through my own crisis moment, and I suddenly became a single mother of 4 kids in roughly my mid-30s. I still didn't pull the class out at that time, but that was an introduction to it, because during that time, so I became single, and I needed to find a way forward. And let me back up a little bit. The class is how do you build true strategy and resilience through adversity? Or what are the things that we need to know to fill this gap? In the fall of 2014, I began to just know that something was going on. I had become depressed, and I had gained 20 pounds, and I knew that there was something going on. And what I realized is there was a good amount of unhealth in my relationship at the time. There was a lot of emotional abuse and psychological abuse. And in the fall of 2014, I began a practice that I now with my clients really, really encourage, and that is a daily journal practice. So I started writing every day. And what really changed about this is I began to gain this awareness of my thoughts. I also had a witness to my life on what was going on, and I could see the patterns that were going on. But in the fall, a lot of my writing sounded like this: God help me, God help me. I don't know what to do. God help me. What is wrong? What is this? What do I do in this situation? Until in January, I wrote one thing, and it all changed. I have no idea why it changed on this day, but my writing for that day was, I will not be a victim this year.
Now tell us what happened then.
Then within 2 weeks of writing, I will not be a victim this year, I was a victim in 2 open cases in Orange County, which is
criminal cases.
The first one was that I was assaulted in public by my partner at the time. That night changed the complete trajectory of my life from there. As you can only imagine, and led to the path that I am on now. But within also 1 week of that case, I was standing, that event, I was standing in front of the grocery store of all places with my daughter in the cart, my purse in the cart, and I was looking at the flowers in front of the store. And all of a sudden, a woman tapped me on the shoulder and said, "That guy just stole your purse." And I looked around, and sure enough, I can see a guy running away with my purse. And I look at the woman and I said, "Watch my baby." And then I took off running after the guy, and I started screaming, "That guy just stole my purse. That guy just stole my purse." Suddenly there's a cafe down the way. One gentleman popped up, then two, then four. They took the guy down. They got my purse back and my phone back. And the guy ended up getting hit by a car. He fortunately survived. But I tell those stories because in the first case, I was left on the ground with no phone and no purse. And I did not utilize any of my agency. I was in shock. I didn't know what I even was accessible to me.
When you say agency, what do you mean by that word?
Sure. Agency is step 2 of our class. And I'll go into this a little bit more, but agency is the idea that it's your own belief and your ability to make impact on your world, that you can poke into life, as Steve Jobs says, and something's going to push out on the other side. So agency is our belief in ourselves to build our life forward, to take action. And it's not even just the action, it's the belief in our ability to do so. It's our actual implementing of those beliefs and making a difference. In my case specifically, I took agency in the second story, and I got my phone back and my purse back, and the bad guy got hurt. So this is why it's so important to me to work with my clients on this concept of agency.
Well, Kim, one, I want to thank you to share personal matters like that about your life, but it also helps our audience and all of us, because I think most of us think the people on the show and any type of success show, they're just naturally successful all through their lives. And of course, you showing us there are rough spots in there. There are difficult. There are mountains that you have to overcome and obstacles. And it's very nice of you. So thank you for sharing that. I think it makes our life a bit easier to know someone else got through it. And now I'm interested to know some of the things in Kim's lifestyle class. And I think that's the name of a book when you're going to write it next, because I'm excited. That I would definitely pick up in a store. Is this about geometry? Is it about cooking, fixing a car, or starting a business?
Yeah. So, let me fast forward. Let me tell this, how we got to the life skills class from there. So here I was, and then I will break down what's actually in the class. At that moment, I was thrown into a different story and became a single mom of 4 kids. And I was a stay-at-home mom before then, although I have an undergraduate degree in psychology, but I had to essentially go into the workforce at 35, where a lot of people come in right after college and you are kind of embedded into the language. But when I went back into corporate America, I didn't know the basics. I didn't know just this corporate language, and the people who are in it don't even realize that they're speaking it. So little by little, I pitched myself into my first corporate job. I bought my first car. I bought my first condo, and launched myself into a role actually in business travel sales. So I did that for about 3 years and continued to try to get my kids set up and establish a new life forward. And that leads us to March of 2020, where I was selling business travel sales when the entire world shut down. So I got laid off. But because I'm familiar and luckily had read about these concepts of kind of sacred storm, when things happen to you in your life and it feels beyond coincidence of one thing after another. And I was aware of that. And I already had the whisper still of Kim's life skills class, telling me and encouraging me to start. I just didn't have the bandwidth to do it. So when I got laid off, I thought, here's my opportunity. If I don't take this, I'm literally handed the world shut down. then I started. So I wrote the curriculum of the class. I ran 2 rounds of beta in the spring of 2020 in the summer and realized that there was real impact. So I decided to take the course because, again, I had this idea of Kim's life skills class, but I didn't know where to put it or what it actually was. I decided to take it to market as a corporate wellness program because being in business travel sales, I had built up a pretty strong network of CEOs and CFOs and heads of HR, both in Orange and San Diego.
Kim, before we go further, I'd just like to let our audience know that if you're just tuning in, you're listening to The Secrets of Success on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. I'm Bill Horan. Our guest today is Kimberly Stark. She is the founder of the company Flourish. And Kim, would you tell us a little bit about the company and the website?
Sure. It's the Flourish Consultancy. We are a learning and development company that offers an employee wellness program to all sorts of different entities, and you can find us at theflourishconsultancy.com.
And we'll give you that information again if you want to get it down and follow more of Kim's story. Now we'll let you go back. Now you mentioned that here you are moving ahead and everything, and the pandemic comes. And I have a note from your notes that says you went and sold your condo and started a business. Now, as we said before the show, that's really where they say burn the bridges. There's no going back when your condo is gone, right?
No, you're not wrong, Bill. So that's what I did. I ran those 2 rounds of beta in the spring and summer of 2020 after I'd written the curriculum. And in order to fund the business, I sold that hard-earned condo that I had raised my little ones in, that really housed us during a special time, in order to take a risk and build the life that I wanted forward. I ended up putting 6 months down on rent on a dream little house by the beach and started my company. So I took it to corporate in the fall of 2020 and started pitching corporate clients as an employee wellness program. And it worked. In the spring of 21, I wrapped around into education and began to cold call school districts to try to get the course into both educators, but also just anyone who works in a school district. Now we've expanded to CPA firms. So if you can get your CPE units. We have hospitality clients. And that takes us to where we are now.
Kim, it just amazes me, and I'm going to say this with a smile on my face because we know things worked out. But starting a business in the spring of 2020, did people look at you and say, what is wrong with you? We have to remember, this was prime pandemic. We were getting, every newscast was death tolls coming up, new people in the hospital, lack of ventilators, etc. Yeah. And you're starting a business. I mean, did they think you were sane?
Probably not.
Okay.
I mean, and honestly, it's fair. It's a fair assessment to say what I did was a little crazy, right? But I also knew that this had been inside me for so long. I had to make a move. I had to try it. And I knew instinctively there was very little outward research shown between the connection between the health of our employees and profitability of a company, but I knew it intrinsically, right? If you have healthier and healthier employees, and we're talking about not just physically, but mentally healthy and healthy relationships, taking care of themselves at home, all of those things, you're going to make more money as a company. Now, after COVID, we have all of Gallup's data. We have so much hardcore research that's been done on the correlation of the two things. But anyway, I was confident that was there. And I also didn't know anybody who was doing it. At that point, I didn't even know learning and development companies existed. I didn't even know how to talk about Flourish or even what it is. Now I have a lot more language around what we are.
Kim, looking back, or Kimberly, I'm sorry, I'm being very simple with you. But Kimberly, looking back, is there one thing now you'd say, I would have done this differently? Your advertising or the day you started it or the people you hired?
You can't, I don't know if you can really do that, because if you choose to be an entrepreneur, the entire pathway is flawed. And you don't know what you're doing. This was the first time. I mean, this was my first entrepreneurial venture. I've actually formed a second company in travel since then. But I didn't know anything. I didn't know how to file an LLC. I didn't know I was supposed to do this thing that I got a late penalty on. So now I went and did it because I didn't know it existed. I didn't know that if you speak about it this way, it's better. I didn't know that I was selling to the end client when I should have been selling to the buyer. I didn't, I spent a lot of money in this one area when maybe I should have spent it over here. But even when I was making those choices, I knew I didn't know the answers. But this is it. And this is what I want to relay to your listeners and why even my story matters to you as the listener. Because in order to launch a company or build your life forward, but if you want to continue to expand and grow, you have to get comfortable with making a call moving forward on things that you are uncertain of, and being willing to get that feedback. And even if it's the wrong way, and course correct and not look at it as failure. I mean, it's growth mindset, but we all kind of throw around the word growth mindset. But if you are truly committed to what it means to have a growth mindset, being open to constructive criticism, not looking at failure as failure, looking at not expanding, looking at letting fear stop you as failure, redefining failure in those ways, then it's a painful process. So you have to be committed to that process.
Was there ever a day you thought, oh, nuts, the heck with this, I'm going to go to Costco, put my application in and see if I can get a job?
There wasn't a day that I thought that. There were many days where I thought that was maybe what I was going to have to do, because I knew I had, when I moved, I knew I had 6 months to take it profitable. And not only profitable enough to sustain my life and my life as a single mother of 4 kids. And
that's right. Let's remind our audience, there's 4 little mouths to feed.
Yeah.
And you can take risks, but also you can't take risks with them. And children need a lot of things: shoes, clothes, toys, et cetera, et cetera.
College,
yes. Now, let me ask you, looking at setting up the business, did you have a favorite life lesson quote that kind of guided you through that time?
I didn't have a favorite. Well, there were many. There were so many and in fact, Flourish is based on those life lessons. Flourish is based on, let me talk about it this way. Expertise, in order to be an expert, it was housed exactly the same way for thousands of years up until about 30 years ago with the dawn of the internet. The experts were the ones who had access to the information. So they were the educators, the professors, they were the doctors, they were the sellers. Information wasn't as accessible then, so you would have to go to those who knew it to do it. Now everyone has it. It's just a matter of the expertise becomes, can you make sense of it? Can you take this myriad of information and create a path that is impactful in lives? And that's what we've done at Flourish. So to answer your question, that's what I do by nature. I take the things that I think are impactful and I've learned and have shown to be impactful in the lives of others and put them into this pathway for our clients.
Now, I love this quote, and I think it gives us all a hope, and I took it from your notes. Everything around you was created by people no smarter than you. Now, that gives me hope, because I know there's a lot of smart people out there, and a lot of them way smarter than me. But I think that gives us all hope to know that we're kind of equal to those other people who set up their own business or ventures, etc. Is that what you're saying?
Bill, that was a life-changing, which a lot of this stuff, but that was a life-changing moment for me. You have to realize I was in a relationship for 15 years where that person told me I was crazy over and over again, not even crazy, but pathological, diagnosed me and said, you have this, you have this, you have this. At one point, I believed him so much. And just side note, I've never been diagnosed with that. Nothing against people who have, but this was the world that he had created. So I got to a place in my life where I thought, well, if I'm crazy, that means I have nothing to contribute to the world. And if I have nothing to contribute to the world, then why go on? It wasn't until I was removed that whole hell broke loose and everything broke open that I was removed from that voice. And I realized I'm not only not crazy, I'm actually quite intelligent. And then Steve Jobs comes in on this little interview that I watched, is the quote that you're referring to, and says, not only that, but if you look around, everything you see here was created by someone no smarter than you. And you can change that, and you can make your mark, and you can build your thing that other people can use that can impact their lives just as you're using these things. And if you realize that you don't have to stay within the walls of conventional life, and if you realize that you, me, all of the listeners are no different, that you're smart enough to create your own thing that can better humanity. And that's what, in the end, like, it's such a fun mission to commit to through life, that yes, we're going to enjoy it. And yes, we want to be happy. And yes, we want to have agency. But this belief that you're no different, I'm no different, you're just no different. We're all have that ability to contribute to the world. And when I heard that, he was right. He says, once you realize that, you'll never be the same again. And that was absolutely true for me.
And to our audience, they can't see you. This is radio, but I can tell them that as I'm looking at your face, you are beaming, saying these words. So in other words, this is what you're really enjoying it. You are taking your section of the world and making changes in it and making it happen. And how many of us just kind of pass through the world, kind of like leaves on a windy day. We're just blowing from space to space, and whatever happens, if an opportunity comes up, we'll grab it. But if not, hey, we'll miss out on that and maybe catch it 2 years from now. So I think you're giving us all hope. We want to find out more about Flourish Consultancy. But at this point, again, in the show, we want to remind our listeners, you're listening to The Secrets of Success on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. I'm Bill Horan. Our guest today is Kimberly Stark. She is the founder of Flourish Consultancy, and she's telling us how that went about and the highs and lows that she experienced. Kim, could you tell us the website once again where we can find out more?
Sure. It's theflourishconsultancy.com.
Now, again, going through your notes on how the business began, etc., you talk a lot about getting outside your comfort zone. Where was your comfort zone? You sound very at ease going through this, like, hey, I got to do it. Let's get in there and do it and see what happens. Was it that easy for you, or was it like pushing when you're up to 100 pounds in weight, getting up to 102, and then maybe 2 weeks later, 105, etc.?
Let me put it this way. I think that right now, today, I have an incredibly high tolerance for uncertainty. I think with the pandemic, that really shook everyone up, in that they had to assess within themselves how comfortable are they with uncertainty. You have to realize the combination of having children, so many, so little, like, so when I was so young, when you have little kids, nothing is certain. One of them is going to throw up on the way to the event and you're going to have to turn around. One of them is going to melt down right before you get to the thing. I mean, so I was already, and then also in the relationship it just was a little up in the air. And then I was thrown into this very uncertain place and becoming a newly single mother. And so my entire probably last 15 years was a little bit Bill. I didn't realize how uncertain I was the majority of the time, right? And so because of that, maybe it was a little, and honestly, Bill, I didn't have another choice. I had 4 kids that I needed to provide for. I had been laid off in the middle of a pandemic. I had a way forward in a mission I felt called to as a very young age. I was confident in my work ethic to commit to that business until I either just like there was nothing left and I had to go do something else, or I made it successful. Let me say one last thing on that. If I had been in a super comfortable place, I don't know if Flourish would exist, to be honest. And I was already uncomfortable, and I was already in a position where I had to build a life forward for myself and my kids. Comfort is really the nemesis of your listeners who want to do that, because it makes it more challenging, and you have to make yourself go into those uncomfortable places.
Let's remind our listeners that, as you told us earlier in the show, you had sold your condo, your living space, in order to build this business. That's so right. It's kind of intimidating and scary to me to think that, hey, if this doesn't work, I may have no place to live, and that's bad enough, but there's these 4 little people around me who also have no place to live, and I would have to find a solution and find it pretty quickly. So it's really a tough spot. Was there any either saying or mentor or religious aspect that kept you going, that on a tough day you'd say to yourself, or you'd read a chapter of Napoleon Hill's book or something?
I have read that book. I do love it. It was the Flourish Masterclass.
Okay.
It's what I teach. I mean,
a perfect
honestly,
lead-in.
let me tell you about it's all of it. That's why I did it. So the Flourish Masterclass is an 8-week course, and for your listeners who are interested in bringing the course into their company, or it's an 8-week course on how to build true resilience and strategy through adversity. So we open up the course week 1, and again, it could be done in a talk, it could be done in a half day, retreat style, but in classic sense. The first module is called perspective. The very core of that is changing your underlying beliefs around adversity, around discomfort. Now you're shifting your perspective on hardship itself. You don't look at it as hardship. You look at it as an invitation to grow, to change, to your next thing. You're constantly in this state. And while it may suck and it may be annoying, you're shifting your perspective on hardship itself, looking for ways, asking yourself now, what is this here to teach me, and what's my best way forward from here? Week 2 is called agency. So you know, and your listeners know why agency matters so much to me. I lived so much of my life not knowing that I could make impact on the world around me. And the moment I realized that, I completely changed the trajectory of my life and my children's lives, and now my clients' lives, right? So agency, and I heard actually a really interesting thing this weekend from Dr. Paul Conti, who's Harvard and Stanford educated, longtime psychiatrist. And he said, you know what makes 2 people happy? And I'd done agency a few years ago, but it felt really good to hear it from someone. He said, gratitude and agency. That's what makes people happy.
Kimberly, real quick, what's next for Kimberly Stark?
Well, I just launched another company this summer, this one in luxury travel. So that's been a fun, totally different thing way forward. But I think in the same way you can experience the world and it can change you, in the same way education can change you.
Well, I want to promise from you, and now our audience will hear it, so you'll have to live up to it. When you come out with the book, Kim's Life Skills Class, or Kim's Life Skills that you present to us, will you come on with us again?
100%. You got my word, Bill.
All right. Kimberly, thank you so much for being with us today. Let's remind our audience again, our guest has been Kimberly Stark. She is the founder of Flourish Consultancy, and the website one more time.
theflourishconsultancy.com.
Kimberly, thanks for being with us. We'd like to remind our audience that you've been listening to The Secrets of Success on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. I'm Bill Horan, asking you to please join us again next week at the same time when we will continue our journey to success.